So I've been blessed. I've been a paramedic for 33 years now and a Christian for 35. And over the years, I've learnt of just the power of prayer. And there's a scripture in the Bible, Matthew 16:19, that says, I've given you the keys of the kingdom of heaven and earth. And whatever you bind on earth, I will bind in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth, I will loose in heaven. And I was thinking about it one day and I thought, well, Lord, if you can put an angel by the pool of Bethesda, then I want one in the back of my ambulance. And so that night I went home and I got, my wife has a little container and the oil is from Israel. And so I took that, and I think I might have used it all actually. Anyway, I took it and I went to work the next day and I anointed the doors with oil up above the doors all the way around the ambulance. And I exercised my authority and I bound the spirit of sickness and death and I forbid it to enter into the ambulance. It was forbidden, can't come in. Everything not of God is not allowed to enter that ambulance. And then I loosed healing and I called down, Lord, you've got an angel by the pool of Bethesda. And every time somebody got in, they got healed. I want an angel in the back of the ambulance, that every time somebody gets in here, they're going to be healed. And so I did that, I prayed, and then maybe about an hour later, we got a job. And the first thing that happened was the guy I was working with, he's driving, so he gets into the ambulance, and one of the radios was in the wrong spot. And because it was in the wrong spot, this was totally out of character for the guy, but he lost it and he's just really tripping out at the fact that this radio is not in its correct place. And I'm just sitting there watching this whole thing unfold. And then I remembered, well, I've just prayed over the ambulance and I've forbid everything not of God from entering. And it's not the man, it's the spirit behind the man that couldn't get into the truck. Anyway, at the end of it all, after about a minute, he'd sit there and goes, oh wow, man, I'm sorry about that. I don't know where that came from. And I'm sitting there thinking, I think I do. So anyway, we went to the Royal Brisbane Hospital and we had to pick up a 9-year-old little girl. And there was a nurse escort coming back with her and we're taking her from the Royal to Lady Cilento, the Children's Hospital. And on the way back, I was just talking to the nurse and I said, so what sort of things have to be done? And she told me that it was major surgery and the young girl was going to be intubated for a long period of time and her blood was going to be pumped through a machine to oxygenate it to give her lungs a rest. She was so sick. But all of a sudden I just felt, it was like the presence of the Lord. I just knew that I knew this little girl was going to be okay. Anyway, so we dropped them off at the Lady Cilento and a period of 2 weeks went by. And then we got called to go back to Lady Cilento and it turned out it was the same little girl and the same nurse that went across the first time. And so I said to the nurse, so did you have to do everything you thought you had to do before? And she said, and this is her words, the turning point for that little girl was when she went from the Royal to Lady Cilento. From that moment on, she started to get better and better and nothing had to be done. She was completely healed and she was going back to the Royal to be discharged and go home. And I was just blown away. It's like, that is what it's all about. That, and another testimony was after an event, we ended up down in Brisbane after the funeral for Kimmy. And we went to a church meeting at the church we were going to. And there was a pastor and his wife sitting at the same table. And I just shared that experience, what I'd done and the little girl getting healed. And then they get excited and they're going, oh, we've had a similar experience. And their 9-year-old little boy who was in Redcliffe Hospital, exactly the same sort of condition, and the x-rays showed that his lungs were pretty dark. So we knew that there was a lot of congestion and he was intubated and he went from the Redcliffe Hospital to Lady Cilento and the x-rays showed the black mass in his lungs. So when he got to the Lady Salento, the doctors there had a look at the x-rays, and then they took another set of x-rays, and the x-rays that they took showed his lungs perfectly clear. And they said to the nurse that was with them that these can't be the correct x-rays. This is what it is now. And they said, no, that's correct. So they rang up Redcliffe, got them to resend their x-rays. And they showed them the same x-rays, black, full of phlegm and everything else. And they took him back in, did another x-ray themselves, and his lungs were perfectly clear. And when they said that, I said to the mum and the dad, so there would have been a doctor and a nurse in the ambulance. And they said, yeah. And I said, so who went in the back? And Mum said, I did. And I looked at her and I smiled and I said, so did you like the decals on the roof and on the walls? And then the penny dropped. That was my ambulance. It was the only one like it in Brisbane, and that was the one that they travelled across in, and he was healed. He was healed completely. And that was their testimony. And when I shared that, we're all dancing, like we were so excited that even though I hadn't been in that ambulance for, I think it was about 4 months, we left from Brisbane and went up to Northern Territory. And God is still actively healing people who go into that ambulance. That's the power of prayer, but also the love of the Father. It's his desire to heal. All we have to do is ask him. So good.